Jules Schroeder is ranked by Inc. magazine as top number one of the top 27 female entrepreneurs changing the world and one of the top 40 millennials to follow. Jules Schroeder is a musician and a visionary on a mission to inspire people to create a life by their own design. With this vision, Jules created Unconventional Life, a Forbes column and top-ranked podcast for entrepreneurs that features the stories of millennials living from this new paradigm. Unconventional Life has reached millions of people from over 75 different countries and has become a global community of like-minded entrepreneurs, influencers, creatives, and thought leaders. Jules herself has always been multi-passionate as an avid CrossFitter, yoga teacher, musician and singer, writer, avid traveler, and overall life enthusiast. Welcome, Jules Schroeder.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here with everyone.
Okay, so how we got introduced was by our common friend Brianna, who actually told me about your project this year in Egypt before she even told me about you, and she was very enthusiastic about this project. But maybe you could elaborate a little bit. What are you doing in Egypt this summer, and what's going to happen there?
Yeah, so I have been hosting these 5-day life and business accelerators in exotic locations all over the world, whether it's been castle towns in Italy, islands off of the coast of Madagascar, safaris in Africa, Bali, Nicaragua, you name it, we've been there. We've done tours on over 7 different continents. And this time we are taking over a luxury ship up the Nile River in Egypt in May 14th through the 18th. We'll be bringing a group of about 75 entrepreneurs, creatives together. And I like to say that these events are really accelerators. I'm a magnet for people in transition. When you feel like you're ready to go to your next level, the community that draws to these events, we're all word of mouth. It's applied to attend. It's very intimate. And I see things like we were just in Fiji in November. A couple got engaged. A woman came back who literally was having trouble conceiving. She conceived on the yacht in Croatia in May. I've had people leave a breath work and close a $150,000 business deal over a lunch conversation. And so I like to say that they're containers for miracles. And so if there are things that you want to have happen in your life in all different areas, these events really get to be magnets for those things to occur. And it's a very highly curated group of people from all over the world. So it allows connections to happen at an accelerated rate where normally, on the screen, you wouldn't have the chance to be able to.
When you say a curated group of people, curated how? What kind of people are coming to these gatherings?
Yeah, I like to say that everyone's been up to something, meaning, they've been the who's who of whatever industry. We've had anyone from Olympian athletes to high-level entrepreneurs to social impact leaders to even moms and pops to people who've been working in corporate. And that each of them, has had a certain level of maybe monetary success, and they got to a point and realized, well, now what? What about my lifestyle and my relationships and the things that are important to me and my purpose and my impact? And so the unconventional life is very much this conversation around the and reality or the holistic perspective of success. So I'd say people who come to these events share that common theme and are really looking to hyperconnect with people who also do and feel the same.
Before we started this interview, you told me that you always aim for the impact to happen locally as well when you bring people to a certain country together. What do you mean by impact happening locally?
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed, I got into retreats actually on accidents. I had a near-death experience in 2015, which is a wakeboarding accident that led to me writing for Forbes, launching the first unofficial podcast on Forbes Under 30 called Unconventional Life. All I wanted to do was to tell stories of people following the non-traditional path. So I had more permission, per my mission, to do life on my own terms. And that led to a dream where I saw 30 entrepreneurs gathering in Bali came out of my mouth. And flash forward, here we are 8 years later, and we're having this conversation. So wild what gets to happen in those short time frames. But for me, one thing that I noticed on attending a lot of events and retreats and things is that money would come to these different places, and oftentimes third world countries. And it would, profit the retreat leaders or it would profit the hotels. But the people who were there, who are so vibrant in the communities, for some reason it stopped. And so I've made it, my mission when we do these events that we always allow, the money that we make to flow back into the currency. And, one of my favorites is we had 120 people in Bali back in 2018. And I went to this northern part of Ubud, and there was this woman there, and she had all the women of the village, and they made malas. And that was how they fed their families. So we had her make 120 malas that she was able to bring to the event. And literally, the most amount of business that they had seen in an entire year, we paid, in the course of one event. And then she was able to then continue this business and got 10 different event referrals, and it completely changed her life. And not even her life, but, the 30 or so women and families that were in that village. And so we always aim to find local partners and how we can flow the money back, both, tangible ways and goods, but in also, concrete ways, whether it's raising money for schools or, orphanages, different nonprofits and things like that.
Got it. You just mentioned you had a near-death experience that made a big change in your life. Could you elaborate a little bit more? How did it change your life, actually?
Yeah, so I grew up, the oldest of 5 girls. I was a big gymnast, athlete, also a competitive snowboarder here in Colorado, and I also got into wakeboarding. And it was a summer Colorado day, and literally went out with the boys to see who could get the most air, and just tried it again and again and again. And finally I launched, got the air, and came down and smacked pretty hard. And my next memory after hitting the water, I was taken out of the water and was coming out of the MRI in the hospital. And I was approached by this white figure, 6 Black Shadow council member, out of body experience. Doctors thought my neck was broken. They thought I might've been paralyzed. And I just remember saying in this council experience, hearing them say, "Jules, you have more work to do in the world. Do you want to do it?" And I just remember saying yes, as long as I don't come back as a vegetable. I was clear that whatever work I was going to do, I wanted to be physically able to do it. And in that next moment, I was zapped back into my body, felt this energy forge my neck back together and shoot down my spine. And the moment that I woke up, everything shifted. It was like I went from life being driven by me to the start of life coming through me. And I didn't even know what I didn't even know that meant at the time. But what it felt like is I was running on maybe a 10-volt battery. And after that accident, I was supercharged into a 100,000 volt battery. And flash forward 3 weeks later, I get a call from a woman working at the United Nations. And she says, "Jules, I'd love for you to be a global ambassador for education. Can you be at the UN in 3 weeks?" And I'm like, still in a neck brace. I'm like, this isn't really the best time. And I hear this voice, and it's, "Tell her you have this initiative to reimagine higher education." I had no initiative. At this point, I'm like, I've completely lost my mind. And I tell her this thing called Create You. And next thing I know, I'm on my way to the UN. Forbes reaches out to be a part of Forbes Under 30 and start writing for them, and to start the first podcast for Forbes, Unconventional Life. And all these dominoes really began from that moment. And I like to say that my life started accelerating it at hyperspeed, but I also had to really learn to listen in a whole new set of principles in a whole new way. Because for me, that experience, it was like, I'll call it God is how I related to it. If I ever wondered what happened after, I was like a longing, actually, because it was so beautiful and so magnificent, touching that place, that being back in a human, in a skin body, in a suit. And I was like, wait, if this exists, then what is all this meaning and significance we place on our time here? And so it's been a series of unpacking. And I imagine a lot of the work, that I have been doing has been called from that, is to inform that, is to remember who we are and why we are who we are. And so for me, the way that I live my life is very much coming through. As I like to say, I'm, really just the translator. It doesn't matter what I say. If I can just get out of the way enough, I'll let God, universe, source, create the best medium of application. And I really believe all of us, you don't have to die to come back, can resonate with that in some ways. We are all being called into great things. And that accident definitely put that in perspective for me.
I see. I think you work with a lot of millennials. What advice would you give millennials to find their purpose, like you clearly have found yours, and to live it?
I would say that when you start, I call it intuitive action or rapid visioning, you just have to start listening and iterating. So often there can be this significance where we feel like, I want to start a podcast, for example, or I want to write a book, or I want to start this business. And we imagine what step 10 would look like in order to do that. And the gap for what we know inside versus what we look like outside, or what our circumstances look like outside, can seem so big. But if you just get in the game and say, okay, can I take one tiny step? Who do I know who has a podcast? Maybe I can just ask them about, what does a podcast like? Or who do I know who I could be fun to interview? Or can I just allow one step to inform the next step to inform the next step? And I promise, when you get in the medium of whatever it is that you desire to create, you start having the experience of having that which you want. So there never is a gap. You actually give yourself the experience of having the things that you want now versus perceiving you'll get to have them later. And one of my favorite ways of doing that, and you can try this out, is you just start literally future casting memories that you want to experience. And I do this through meditation. I lead this in activation, my private coaching work. Obviously on the retreats, we do various different ways that we access these points. But in doing that, you'll be surprised how quickly these miracles get to show up in your life. And then by proxy, you start to assimilate feedback and you get to know who you are through the presence of the impact that you touch.
How would you define impact entrepreneurship in your words?
For me, I view it as a ripple. I think that sometimes we view impact like a quantity, right? How, at what scale am I successful based on my impact? And for me, I view it literally as a ripple. And if I just stay present with one conversation, or I like to say these events, for example, if I can light one torch that then lights the other torches, then I know that I'm doing something right. And so if I can go to one person or one mom, or if you're the head of your family, whatever it might be, like however it is, if I can have one thing and trust that that lights the next thing, then that's true impact. Impact is being humble enough to say, I will be used however I need to be used, sovereign enough to say, I'm the one to do it, but then also confident and brave enough to just actually do it and show up for it day in and day out. And it really is a choice that you make.
What do you think are the biggest challenges millennial entrepreneurs are facing today, since you work with them constantly?
Yeah, well, I like to say that I think a lot of millennials are in an identity crisis. And, we're all finding and reinventing ourselves, where if I look at, my parents' generation, or the oldest of five, my dad was from Puerto Rico, and, his mom was an immigrant, and we learned a lot in a lot of different ways, is that, it used to be you go to school, you go to university, you get one of, 10 or 12 different career paths, you get a good job, you get a better job, you have a house, the family, etc. And there was a path or a process. And I think one of the blessings of us as millennials, we're like, I don't want to subscribe to that trajectory. Or maybe you did subscribe to that trajectory and now you're sitting in a reflective moment of, I don't want to keep subscribing to that trajectory. And, I think one of those challenges is with, choice becomes opportunity, but it also comes confusion. And I think it can lead to paralysis. And I think sometimes we are in analysis paralysis, or even another version of the same coin is shiny object syndrome, where we're chasing all these various things and we don't see the things through. And so one of the things that I'll say is that if you stay with one thing, I always like to say, where's the meter of aliveness? So I always like to check in with myself, whatever it is that I'm going after. If I give it a 1 to 10 on the aliveness scale, if I feel 10 out of 10 aliveness, then I follow the thread. And even if there's something else that maybe I'm excited to do, but in this moment, it's only a 4 on my aliveness, it's in the not right now. It's not a no, it's just not alive enough yet. And I promise when you follow that metric, you'll start to see the pieces arranged, and I call it the secret menu of life, starts to present itself, like conversations like this. We didn't know each other a week ago, and here we were in the aliveness threads following, and we imagine we have similar operating systems, and here we are now on this conversation. And so I would say wherever you are, you always find your way home if you find your way through your guiding principles.
Oh, that's beautiful. It sounds much more deeper than general self-help industry. What's your take on the whole self-development industry and the scene, which been around for a long time, and especially for a group like millennials have been a long time deep in that. So I know you've taken some stance in your website with that, and I would like to hear from you directly. What's your take on the industry of self-development?
Well, I remember even, when I had the near-death experience, I was like, what do I even Google? Soul, left body, supercharged. There were like podcasts or conversations like this. It was like, how do I fit the magnitude of transformation I'm feeling? Like, I don't even have language for it. And fortunately, Matt Kahn is an amazing author. In case anyone doesn't know him, he wrote this book, Whatever Arises, Love That. And he talks about the nervous system. And I was like, oh, the nervous system. You mean my body is correlated to my spirits, which is correlated to my emotional system? Like, whoa. So I think that there is, if I look at the industry as a whole, I think in general, people try to give context or meaning for experience. And sometimes that's valuable. But I also find that sometimes we can be in such a reflective process of self-help that it stays at the eye level. And the work that we do and assimilate never gets to integrate. Because we are human beings in bodies having experiences in a 3D world in real time. We are also souls and spirits incarnated in those physical bodies. And so I think that if you stay just in a one-dimensional perspective, meaning you're just working on yourself and you're working on yourself and you don't translate it out, then it just stops there. And you wonder, well, why does my life not change? Or why do I need another podcast? Or why do I need another retreat? Or why do I need another thing like that? And so I think there's real power in integration. And I think that's one of the things that often is missing is we have to really take a holistic perspective for ourselves and our needs. And also our word really creates our world. And so oftentimes how we shift things in our reality is we create ourselves in a conversation. Just like in this conversation, I'm recreating myself moment by moment. You are recreating yourself moment by moment. You're hearing this moment by moment. And so we really do have to take all three approaches in order to really see transformation. Otherwise, you just kind of stay in that cycle. And so if you've been in a cycle, yes, assimilate, grow. I am an avid grower, learner. It is why I do the work that I do, but I'm an integrator. And I really think you got to land an anchor before you build. And I like to call it the compound effect. It's not all or nothing. I'm not healed or I'm broken. It's not like I'm expanding or I'm contracting. It's like we're always breathing. We're always in a cyclical cycle. And I think the same thing is true for how we view our development, our own growth as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. I understood you're creating a wellness center as well, besides these group gatherings around the world. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? You're building it in Colorado, right?
Yes. So, when COVID hit, I think for many of us, a lot of, blessings of opportunity and creativity and so much more, we could say. But for me, I've been doing these retreats. We had done them on 6 different continents from 30 people to 500, and the values and the essence, the principles of the unconventional life. I had so many people say, this doesn't need to just end after 5 days, or most of the time people hang out for like a week or two, wherever we are anyways, just to, have fun and be with each other. And so my friend, longtime friend and business partner, and then eventually we were romantic partners, came to me and he's like, I have a background in real estate development. I love what you've been doing. What if we were to actually combine this into a physical location where people could receive, the same types of benefits, mindful living, also around like wellness therapy, cold plunge, and doing different, biohacking, things like that. We're also music artists. So what if people could have a space they could just record and create, whether that's in music, podcast, whatever outlet or vehicle. So we have been in a fundraise. We acquisitioned a $25 million raise that we've been in. We acquisitioned a few properties and we have started production, which will hopefully open, late next year as a center for people in Colorado to come integrate the principles of this conversation. If it's like stay for a weekend or, stay for a couple weeks where you get to tune up as your best self. You get all the modalities physically, emotionally, spiritually. You get to also connect with different people in time and, you get to learn and also have the space to do what you need. Because I know for myself, health has always been a big thing, not only the near death, but I've gone through a lot of autoimmune things. I've had Lyme's disease. I've had a lot of physical things that I've had to navigate in this lifetime. And so having that space and that resource and that education is so important.
What's your definition of wellness?
I love that question, and for me, when I look at wellness, I like to view it very much as this mind, body, spirit, but it's well-being. It's a well lifestyle in action. It's a verb, if I will. It feels less like a noun of like wellness as a thing, but it's more of a practice. And if I view wellness, it's assimilating a series of practices that you practice for the sake of the practice. And so good health, good well-being, I know for myself, comes when I'm regularly meditating. I love celery juice in the morning. It comes when I am not, Netflixing as much. It comes when I am having really enriching conversations or I'm getting to travel and, there's certain foods, right? The gluten, the dairy, the things that I take out, that lead to the practice of the practice. And so I've figured out my map, I would say, of wellness. And that's what I love about us as human beings. We all have our own things. And so I like to assimilate the tools, and I view wellness as a collection of tools in action as a practice.
Got it. Since you take people in to meet each other in real life, not just online like a lot of people do, I take it you have some stance regarding people actually meeting each other face to face. What do you think is the main difference of meeting face to face instead of meeting just online?
Yeah, well, I'm actually leading a masterclass on this next week or whenever you hear this, called The Art of Experience, which for 5 days we're going to break it all down on how that truly works. And, one of the things that I find about in person is that the type of connection and depth that you can go with people over the course of a couple days transcends years worth of time that you can do online. It's just so much more efficient. And one of the things I have, the things important to me in my life is really efficiency. I really believe that there's so many things we can do and create and have if we really create the structures efficiently to be able to do and have them. And when I look at in-person connection, I call it the art of the pattern interrupt methodology, where what's cool about in person is you have all these variables that you can change, like what you're doing, what pyramid are you going to in Egypt, or, what type of food are you tasting, to what type of conversation are you having. And so you can create these micro state changes externally that allow you then go, wait, what? I thought we were going to do this. And now there's a band and it's happening over here. And like, wait, there's a vista point and I've never seen that before. And so it allows you to get out of your normal programming to then have these aha moments. And when you compound those over a series of 5 days, for me, I've seen these shifts, these life-defining shifts, that there was a clear marker of where I was before and a clear marker of who I became after. And that's the stuff. Transformation at Scale is the business that I'm in. Like, that's the stuff that has me keep coming back again and again and again. And I find in person, yeah, we can do this virtually. I'm going to give it a go next week. So, feel free to tune in and see how I do it online. But there's so many more things in the realm of the senses, the taste, touch, the smell, the hear, that you get to play with. And I really do think that those things allow us to go to different depths of connections that we just can't do online.
Can you tell me some of the coolest transformation stories that you've seen happening in your retreat, when people met each other face to face and did all the things in the group you put together?
Yeah, there's been so many. I would say one of mine was the very first retreat that I did, which literally started from a dream of seeing 30 entrepreneurs gathering, and the words Bali came out of my mouth. And at the time I was running a digital marketing company, and I was like not into people, very much an introverted extrovert. I had no interest in doing retreats. Retreats weren't even cool back then. It was all about yoga and there was not like the way we see it now. But it nagged me. And for weeks, I said to my then boyfriend, what do I do about this thing? Like, I got to get this thing out of me. And some of you might relate with these nagging feelings of these things inside of us. And I called my friend who knew about retreats and I said, please help me. Like, I don't even care if this is successful, but I just got to get this thing done. And there we were. 3 months later, we sold it out in Bali. And it was the first time in my life that I fully had that, 10 out of 10, like, hell yeah, experience of getting to bring all my gifts together at the same place and time. And one of the guys who attended that event, his name was Michael. He was running a $5 million a year staffing company. He was from New Jersey. So if you're from the States, you might kind of imagine he had a bit of a tough exterior. And, he was also going through a really big legal battle. And there was a workshop about living the principles of flow and awakening to higher potential. And he stood up and he's like, this is bullshit. You are all full of shit. And he had a full visceral reaction. And the presentation ended and I went outside with him. We took a walk on the beach and I was like, hey, seems like that was a big experience for you, and in his Jersey accent, he was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I just, it would have been easy to kind of let him off the hook. And we talked and, I just said, hey, well, why don't you just be curious the rest of the time here? I don't care if you believe it or don't believe it. You paid to be here. You're all the way in Bali. Just stay open. See what shows up. By the end of the retreat, he literally, you could see the face and the tough demeanor begin to soften. And he ended up signing up for this course, one of these programs. And long story short, and here he is 7 years later, he sold his company. He moved to Tulum, Mexico. He started a nonprofit called Activated. He is like, Mr. Community Leader, left the legal battle, wrote a book called Chasing the High, became a best-selling author. I mean, it was like the biggest 180. He writes about that retreat, in the book. And so if you ever read the book, you'll see it. But I mean, it's like, he was like, every year he came back event after event because he was like, this is my mile marker. I'll see you in Bali. I'll see you in South Africa. Because every time he said he got a piece of his puzzle, it's like he got to meet himself in the now and then go out and deploy what he got. And he would come back and meet himself again. And that's so true for so many people who come to these events. I'd say 70% of people come back to at least a second event, whether it's right away or years down the line. And it really is a special place. And, I've watched millions of dollars get raised. I've watched, like I said, babies get made, people get engaged, people lose weight that they haven't been able to lose historically. I think the possibility is infinite when you awaken into the right field. When the right field says possibility is present here, miracles can occur, then I think with that shared interest, those things do happen if you're willing to take them on, So you got to do the work, though. I don't just you can't just sit there. He could have left and been like, I'll see you later. I'm going surfing. I was like, you got to get back in the room. So.
Well, I think a lot of people, they want to experience that shift. What advice would you give to those people who are, for one reason or another, unable to attend the entrepreneur gathering or go to travel anywhere to get the shift that you just described, but they really want to get it? How can they at least try to achieve it wherever they are?
I love this question. I call it the hell yes or no principle. And I wrote a chapter on this book called Intuitive Action, where I describe that a bit more. And, it started for me a year before the near-death experience. I was running an Amazon book publishing company. We figured out how to make books bestsellers on Kindle back in 2012. I had 2 other co-founders and found out one of our business partners embezzled a bunch of money, was running a 7-figure company, and overnight was in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. $30,000 a client to work with us at the time. All it took was a few refunds, and I was like well over my head. To top it off, I was dating the other business partner, and our relationship ended in the midst of this. And instead of, trying to accept defeat, I was like, I'll work harder. Instead of working 8-hour days, I will work 10-hour days. Instead of 10-hour days, I will work 14-hour days. And I got so busy in the process of doing that it literally took, after 8 months, running my health into the ground, giving every dollar I could to trying to pay everyone back, all the different things, to realize I hadn't really gotten anywhere. And so I said, instead of doing more, what if I just said no and I did less? And at that time, it was just this profound moment where I hadn't even been conscious of the series of yeses that my life had become. And so for those of us here, we have the power of our yes, and we give it away so frivolously, but even more than that, we give the power of our no away even more frivolously. Where I was saying yes to so many things that I thought I should. I should say yes to this business opportunity conversation because what if it leads to this revenue? Or I should go to that party because I want to be a good partner. Or I should go do this chore because I want to insert X, Y, and Z. And then we train our environment to say, okay, yeah, I will act on the 2s and 3s out of an aliveness scale on a 1 to 10. But then the universe, God, gives us more of these opportunities. And we say, well, what about those 10s? Show me the $1 million in my bank account, and show me the love of my life, and show me the great opportunity. And what I found over the course of 60 days is that every time I said no, I was actually training the universe to make space for a bigger yes. And it took 45 of the 60 days. I told people in my life, you guys can all try this if you'd like. You can even do it for a week, that I want to just get in relationship to the things that I said yes to. And every night I would mark on a little spreadsheet. I would just give it a quick thing on the aliveness scale, 1 out of 10. Here's the thing about a 10, you don't even think about it. Maybe you put on this podcast, it felt like that. Maybe someone invites you on a trip. You're like, this is a 10 out of 10. Maybe you're like, I want to come to Unconventional Life, Egypt. Holy crap, that's so cool. It's like, you don't even think about it. And then there's everything else that you do think about. So just at the end of the day, give yourself a reflection, the decisions you made. And usually I find that a 10 out of 10 aliveness is usually a 10 out of 10 outcome. Something that's kind of like a 3 usually kind of ends up being a 3 experience. And so once I really started saying no, I stopped getting those 3s and 4s. And then eventually when I stopped saying yes to the 6s, I stopped getting them. And when I started saying no to the 8s, then the 10s. And so we really do have that power, and it's micro, seemingly insignificant shifts that compound, that really one day you open your eyes and you're like, whoa, life really shifted. Like progress really occurred. So play with that, the hell yes or no as a practice. Give it an experiment for a week and see what shows up for you.
Got it. Sorry. I have to turn off the... Yes. Okay. I wanted to ask you, do you think the music has a chance to shift people?
Absolutely. I think music is the shortcut to the soul. In my opinion, talk about efficiency. It's like music bypasses the mind and it goes straight to feeling. And I've had the pleasure of working on 4 different music albums, which has been amazing. I'm actually about to go to Nashville in the States and work on my 5th one, which will be really exciting. And it's art. It gets to be feeling in motion. And when we feel things, it shifts us.
What does it mean to you? Why have you worked with music for so long? Why did you become a musician?
Well, when I did that 10 out of 10 aliveness and scale, I looked at the things that were truly above a 10, CrossFit and making music. And those 2 things encapsulated 5% of my life. I literally ranked everything I did in my life. And I was like on a 1 to 10 scale. And I'm like, all the things that I do are like 4. Why are the things that I love only like 5% of my life? So that awakening started me to really start shifting how I gave time to things. And, as a young person, I was on American Idol when I was 16. And so got to do music and things in between. And, even though I could do all this business success, 6-figure company at 18, 7-figure company at 22, it took me 9 years to make my first music album. And what I found is the amount of fun and joy that is alive for me when I sing and when I create. Part of how I create is I channel music. So my albums, I will sit at the piano, fingers, always hit the voice record, and full songs come out. I've given these song transmissions on all kinds of stages, including the United Nations, where I'm like, let's do this in the key of A minor and hope the right words come out. And it's such a present moment practice of just being with what is. And I never really worry about what is said. I just trust that the transmission comes through in its right way. And that really moves people. And it moves me in the process. And wherever I feel joy is where I feel aliveness is, how I like to live my life. So
I see. At this point of the interview, I start feeling like shifting is very important to you, and what you love to do is shift people to their best version of themselves. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, I would say it's a beautiful reflection. It totally is. And for me, I love play. Like, I am the oldest of 5 girls. Like, I grew up just in a very playful environment. And especially after that near-death experience, I was like, we have so much meaning and heaviness on like the things we feel like we need to achieve by the timelines we feel like we need to achieve them, or we were successful or we weren't successful. And so for me, the shifts all become curiosity, and they come games and ways to kind of experiment. And I always like to say I'm always experimenting. I have hypothesis. Will this make a difference? Will that make a difference? I don't know, but it's more fun to try than to not try. And so that very much is, a big part of who I am.
I love that. How about the bigger perspective of shifts, like the shifts of mankind and consciousness? What do you think is happening right now? Because these couple of years have been strange in many ways, and people are, first everybody was online for 2 years, and little by little nobody wants to be online. Everybody wants to get back the human connection, and now the AI has been a big deal for some time already, and it's growing in the people's minds, and some people are afraid, some people are excited. What would you say as an advice for, I'd say, millennials and for others too, about how to keep up the hope in these times?
Yeah, well, I really think we are in a huge consciousness accelerator right now. I think COVID was very much the compression pod, I think, for some of us, maybe including yourself, at least for me. I felt like a lone wolf for a while before. I was like, but there's more. But then life, society, the media, all the different things. And now I think there's more of a general consensus. There is more than just this physical reality. And there is a way of awakening to ourselves. We remember why we are here. And I had the blessing of that near-death experience to viscerally give me an experience of something other than this experience. And, I think we're in a time right now that we're finding each other at rapid rates. And it's not about being the big fish of your own pond anymore. It's really about, how do I step out of the pond that I've been in to come into co-creation, to come into co-collaboration, co-facilitation. And when we all get to learn how to weave our unique geniuses or parts of the puzzle that we each embody together, the amount of coherence and the amount of impact becomes exponential. And I think we're starting to tune into that as a collective. And if you're listening to this and you don't have that community, or you don't have that kind of conversation, in my opinion, like, I could not be the person I am or do the things that I am without it. And I think that that's so true for so many of us, which is why it's like, come to Egypt or come wherever you need to come, even if it's in your local community, right? But allow yourself to be in a new conversation, because every conversation is another conversation. And I get really excited for the times ahead. And we have big work ahead of us too, as a collective. We're either going to figure this out on how to co-jive, where I like to say it doesn't matter whose genius it comes out of, right? Even at my events, I'm like, cool, the thing got said, whether it was my voice or his voice or her voice, as long as you can surrender and have the humility and the dignity and also the confidence to be with it all, real big things get to occur. And I'm a big follower of Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I don't know if you know his work, or some do. He talks a lot about coherence at scale, and I watch him bring 1,600 strangers in a room together, and to watch the level of coherence, vibrational coherence that people achieve in these meditating states. It's like, I've never seen something like that. A 1,600 person event sells out in a couple hours sometimes, like at $2,000 a pop. It's like wild to watch the ripple, the desire for it. And that's something I really strive to do in my events. And I think it's something we all get to strive to do as we come into this new world, is how do we vibrationally jive? And then how does our work get to jive? And ultimately, how does our impact get to magnify? It does through each other.
What do you hope your impact will be in let's say, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, well, I've had this recurring dream for so many years where I walk out onto this like white baby grand piano in a packed stadium, and I put my fingers on and I sing, and it's like this whole moment. So I really look forward to having that moment. I've had this dream so many times about that. So that is definitely something. And, I would love to say that, for me, even when I set out for Unconventional Life, I remember writing to Forbes 3 pages about what the unconventional life is. Here we are 8 years later, and it's like, duh, it's just a part of the common conversation. So I know my work is received when I can feel it in the fabric of what is happening in the world. For me, I'm always someone who loves I can be in front of the camera, but I very much love to be the invisible hands behind the scenes. And so to see people alive and vibrant, where people are like, I don't even remember what it was like before then. Like, it just is the unconventional life. Like, life just is that. It just is life. That for me is the true ripple of impact, because that's legacy. Legacy exists beyond the years that I have on the planet, beyond the years anyone has on the planet, but it exists in the fabric, the webs, the fibers. And so whatever it is that you strive to do, I always look at that 100-year plus future. And whatever I do in the forms, survive me? And the best way to do that is, they're never really about me. I just get to be the gift who brings it forward. So.
Got it. One last question I'd like to ask about the future. This is a question I ask from all of my guests, and then I'd like to take you into the year 2092 with a teleport right now, like this. And there we are. Everything has gone the way you would want it to go. It's a hopeful future, and things are as Jules made them to be. 70 years right now. When you look out of the window, what do you see? How are people treating each other? How are communities functioning? How does it look? What kind of world are we living in a hopeful 2092?
I love that. Well, this teleport, it definitely feels very vibrant. There's a lot of color. People are a lot of smiling, a lot of joy, and there's a lot less technology, actually. People are in nature. They are not glued to these things, including myself. I'm glued at times. They're present with each other as people. And there's a lot more community structure. People are living, they experiment in living in more tribe like it was, in more tribe gathering types of ways. And that people also, in this beautiful utopia, it's health and vibrancy. I can go to any corner and there's some healthy juice for me, and it doesn't cost like $50. I can have all of the healthy things. I can, cold plunge or sauna, and we've invented completely new things, right, that take care of us. But people, they're happy, they're outside, they're breathing, and there really is a reciprocity of resource. You see less of a division and more of a shared giving as we kind of move through. And the details become the details, but you can tell in the fabric of the people. It's like when I was in Fiji, there's something about these people. I don't know what it is, but they feel different. They come and they see, and we feel different. And that we can tell through how we carry ourselves, through how our bodies look and feel, and how we interact with each other. We look at each other.
Got it. Okay, let's work to get there. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. That's all I wanted to ask for today. We were really efficient.
Yes, Aatu, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you, and for everyone that tuned in. If this resonates with you, come check out Unconventional Life podcast or the retreats, and I look forward to staying in touch.
100%. Thank you, Jules.
Bye.